that's it.
All right, it shows on my end that we're live, Andrew.
All right, hi everybody. I'm Andrew Boyd, joined again tonight by my partner Marshall Kauffman for another episode of In the Ring with Kings Promotions. Tonight, very special guest. She worked her way up from the bottom of Main Events Promotions and Vice President of Operations, and she also is a matchmaker. Jolene Mizzone. Thanks for joining us, Jolene.
Thank you.
Hey, Jolene.
Hi, thanks for having me.
For those of you who don't know Jolene, I've known Jolene for at least 20 years. And we've had a lot of good times and a lot of arguments, but it's always been the same. She's the same. She's never changed.
Oh,
So
thank
that's
you.
what I love about her, you know. So Jolene, can you tell people who are tuned in and watching how you started with Main Events? You've been with only Main Events, correct?
Yes, yes. I started in '97 as a receptionist, and then just slowly moved up in time. Then became like travel and site coordinator, and then moved into matchmaking, which was not the fucking plan whatsoever. I got thrown into it. And then vice president of operations. So just like I've done a little bit of everything at Main Events, basically.
So how long were you the receptionist? Because that's something I'm just finding out now today.
Yeah, I started in '97. I started Main Events and in '97 in June, and I was just answering the phones like a receptionist, and I was the assistant to Dino Duva, like typing letters at that time. And I fucking hated it. Hated it. I was there for like a year, and I was just like, I can't do this. This is horrible. And then obviously it didn't bother me that much because I'm still there. So, you know, that's basically started.
I could only imagine you answering the phones. You know,
I was very quiet when I first started.
Someone calling and asking a dumb question.
I was very, very, very polite. And then
that's hard to believe.
I was always a little asshole as a child and everything. The tough skin really was built a lot in boxing from what I've had to deal with.
Well, I think that's the case with so many people, right? I mean, I don't know if you watched the whole Jordan thing, The Last Dance, but you know how they talked about how Jordan got tough during the Detroit Pistons games.
Yes.
And but you know, in boxing, they don't give you much. You don't have much time to get tough. You have to get tough very quick in boxing, or you'll be taken advantage of very quick.
Yeah, and the first 4 years I was there, I just sat back and listened. I didn't know shit about boxing, nor did I claim to. Like, we've had so many people come in and out that I didn't have an opinion about nothing, because who am I?
Right, right.
You know, at that time, the only boxer I knew was Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield. You know,
and Evander Holyfield was promoted by Main Events.
Yes. Yep.
Right.
So I didn't know anything, so I just sat back and learned.
And for those of you who don't know Jolene, if you're a true boxing fan, you've watched fights with Arturo Gatti, you've watched fights with Kovalev, most recently Kovalev. All you have to do is listen to the voice that's yelling, "Use your jab," right? And that's Jolene. So you can always hear Jolene over everybody else, and that's, you know, she's the biggest supporter of her fighters. And I'm not saying that just because you're on here. I mean, you know, we go way back, but she has the biggest, loudest mouth during the fights. So you always know when Jolene's there. If you don't hear her, she must not be in the audience. So it's always great to hear that. Can you tell us, after you went from being a receptionist, what did you do next? Travel?
Then I went, yeah, I did travel and like site coordination, all that good stuff. And that's how I built a lot of my relationships through that with the fighters.
Right.
At the time, Zab Judah, Fernando Vargas, Kermit Cintron, Juan Diaz, Rocky Warwick, that's how I built a lot of the friendship. Dominic Gwynn, Jeff Lacey, it just goes on because
Well, I forgot about Jeff Lacey.
yeah, one thing I'm going to give people advice who are watching that are in the boxing business, the person who does travel and hotel and transportation, it's one of the worst fucking jobs in the business. Because,
It is.
and I'll give them other advice. Always be nice to that person because they can make you or break you. If you want to sleep, if you want a hotel bed, if you want to not sit in the middle seat, be nice to them.
Yeah, right.
Because seriously, people don't think of that, but that is a hard job to corral all those people in one show.
Correct.
Organized.
You're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. That
You don't want a
people,
middle seat.
That or when you have your boxers asking for their comp tickets, they better make sure they're nice as well.
Yes.
So they can get some...
Yes, it's not hard. It's a really easy game. It's not hard. Just treat people the way you want to be treated.
What after you went from travel, did you go right into matchmaking?
Yeah, after I left travel, I went into matchmaking when we're doing all those shows at the Prudential, the Thomas Adamak shows.
Right.
I had not a fucking clue what I was doing. And I was under, Russell was working with us at the time. And, I learned a lot from him, obviously. And one thing I always remember about Russell, here I am, a new female coming into the business. He always had respect for me. Always had respect for me. And I remember making my first match and being like, I hope this guy doesn't lose. That's the name of the game, right? And I learned quickly from Russell, especially, you really should put your glasses on, Marshall. It's easier to see the phone because you're fucking struggling. I learned from Russell, it's about matches. And that's, there's times to put on good matches. And you know what? There's a time where a guy needs a tune-up. So when I'm going into matchmaking, I am all mental when it comes to matchmaking.
Right.
We have Evan Holyfield, who, had 4 fights, and his first 3 fights were easier fights. His last fight that he just had, I said, okay, I'm going to put him in tougher. Well, he beat the guy clearly every round, but he had adversity. After the fight, he was so down on himself, and I went in his dressing room and I said, you did perfect. He said, well, I didn't stop the guy. I said, no, you went through adversity and you passed the test. This was a test you were just in and you passed.
Right.
Because if some guy's going in and blowing somebody out in 1 round, what tape do they have to watch to improve?
It does them no good.
It does them no good. Now, granted, sometimes people need that 1 round because they need their mental.
Correct.
They need their mental back, and that's fine, but there's a time and place.
Now, who would you say, you've been around a lot of people in boxing, Carl Moretti, Russell Peltz, Kathy, and then you've been around, you've done work with Top Rank, you've done work with DeBella. I mean, you've been around a long time. Who would you say you've learned the most from in those years?
You've got mail.
Who did I want? You cut out. I'm sorry.
Who would you say that you've learned the most from in those years of boxing?
I take a little bit from everything. I think the 3 top, obviously, is Kathy, Russell and Carl. Kathy, I take more of a business and marketing from her. Russell is more of, the matches in the ring, and Carl is more of the socializing. He's a
Right.
good, you know what I'm saying? Like, try to keep everybody happy.
Carl knows
You
what to
know?
say, when to say it.
Yes, yes.
Carl's like
Very
Carl's
good at
like a
that.
politician.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree, and the difference with Carl than what it was with Russell, I think, in matchmaking is Carl's job even more so was to protect the main events fighters and build them, where Russell was just putting on great fights. And I think he was doing his very best to try to build the fighters as well, but what's in Russell's DNA is just to put on great fights and
Yes.
not so much favor the A guy or the B, the house fighter. His job was just always putting on good fights, and credit to him for doing that. But you need a little bit of both. You need the Carl Moretti type matchmaker where you're building your house
Right.
fighter, and then you also need the Russell type fighter where you're just putting on one heck of a fight to please the fans.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's stuff. How long have you been vice president now of main events?
I don't even know.
About
What
5,
year?
6 years?
No, I think maybe like 8 years, maybe.
Wow,
I don't
long
know. I
time.
lose track. Yeah.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, I was with main events, not me personally, but we had Kermit Cintron with main events, and so I've had my dealings with main events and everybody in the office, and I knew the staff, and there was a good staff. They had a very good staff coming up, but there was a time maybe 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, when main events strictly went from having some men there to just having all women.
Yeah.
I mean, it was you must have had. It was the only promotional company that had just all women for a few years.
Yeah, and it wasn't even planned. It wasn't like, it wasn't planned. Kathy didn't plan it. It just kind of, that's the way like the pieces fell, really.
Right. Right.
It just happened out that way. Like I said, she didn't plan it. Joe, who's doing now, I'm teaching him matchmaking, and he does the travel and all that stuff. So, he, thank God, because you need some, strength, whatever you want to call it. But it was never planned that way with all females.
Right. It worked out good though for a long time.
Yeah, it did.
It worked out very good. And Kathy, of course, made her impact in boxing because of being a powerful woman in the sport of boxing.
Yeah,
Which was dominated by men promoters.
yeah.
But
She's been through a lot within. She started off as Dan, known as Dan Duva's wife, when Dan started the company, her husband, and she was doing marketing, and it was always Dan Duva's wife. And then when Dan passed away, the family was doing it. She was going to law school, so this way, and supporting 3 kids on her own and taking care of them. And then when the family split, she came in, and she could have easily said, "That's it, I'm done."
correct.
She could have easily did that. And she looked at all of us at the time, Dennis, Carl, Glenn, Lisa, me, Donald, all that, and said, "I can't have these people not have a job. I got to keep this going." And she just, came in, and she had to earn her respect, and she did.
No, that she did.
Whether
sure.
you like her or you don't, she knows what the fuck she's doing.
But I think the same goes. And speaking of who you learn from, the same goes for you. You know, you had to come in and earn your respect
Right.
the same
right.
way. You
Yeah.
know, I mean,
Yeah.
because main events and this is when you were doing travel, was a true powerhouse in boxing.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
and instead of me saying the names, why don't you just tell us some of the names that main events promoted at that time?
Oh, Arturo Gatti, Lennox Lewis, David Tua, Andrew Galata,
Wow.
or
Meldrick Taylor,
Eldrick
Pernell
Taylor, Pernell
Whitaker.
Whitaker, Mark Breland, Evander Holyfield, Zab Judah,
Francisco Bojado, Juan Diaz.
Bajado, Dominic Gwynn, Malik Scott, Kermit Cintron, Juan D. Yeah, that whole crew. Tomas Adamak, you know,
Yeah, it was a
Sergey
true.
now.
They were a true powerhouse, and in my opinion, you know, when I was bringing Kermit up, of course it was like, who do we go with? Do we go with the top rank, or do we go with main events? And for me, it was more so main events, because I thought main events had the better opportunities, especially the fact that we were closer, we were on the East Coast, and
Right.
main events was doing a lot of showbox dates at the time.
Yeah, and then the
And so we
NBC.
started that. That's when Gary was there yet.
Yep.
But you know, there was main events was a true powerhouse, and I think Kathy has changed. She's still doing very well, but I think she's changed her philosophy a little bit in boxing because of the TV revenue. Let's face it, there's only not even a handful of promoters that have TV revenue. You know,
Yeah.
it's PBC, Top Rank, Eddie Hearn, and Golden Boy.
And Golden
You know,
Boy, yep.
and that's all there is. So, you know, we're stuck as far as trying to make a way when there seems to be no way. But I know you guys are still doing some powerful things, doing shows in Russia, uh, and you know, there again, like I was saying before we went into that, you worked your way up, you know, and you've done the same thing that Kathy did by earning your respect, you know, because you've had to earn your respect, because just in terms of making matches and saying, no, we're going to put Kovalev in with this person, or we're
Right.
going to do this, you know. So you've had to do that, you know, and it's not easy.
No, and sometimes hold my breath and say, shit, I hope I did the right thing.
Right. You know, or signing people. Who can you say, and I know who it is, but who can you say was your favorite fighter?
I don't like to say my favorite fighter is one of the fighters that I was the closest with,
Yes.
Arturo Gatti.
Right.
He was like a brother to me.
And he was so down to earth.
Oh my God. Like I could go on and on with stories of just what a good person he was. Like he was fighting, I think at the time it was Bronco McCart in Atlantic City. And, you know, we were there, we go there for the week, he's there. And I'm in Bally's and I'm playing roulette. It's at night. So I'm playing and my number is 22. So I was like, my phone rings and it's Arturo, my cell phone. I'm like, oh shit, I'm really on a roll, you know? So I ignore it. Rings again, it's him. I'm like, oh, well, he's fighting. I guess I should answer it. So I walk to the table and I'm like, Arturo, what's up? And he needed something, of course. So I'm like, I'm looking at the wheel. I'm like, fuck. He's like, what? I go, I was just playing roulette and 22 is my number. And it came out in front of me without me playing. He's like, oh my God, Joe, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, whatever. It's not meant to be. Weeks later, I had to go to his apartment to meet him to bring him to a photo shoot. So he gives me a card. It's a thank you card. And I open it and he's like, this is for everything. And it's a gift certificate for Macy's. Arturo, you don't have to do this, blah, blah, blah. So I have the gift certificate for Macy's. Weeks go by, I'm in Macy's. I'm like, oh, I have this gift certificate. I take it out, buying something. Not inexpensive. Maybe it was makeup or something. So I give the girl the gift certificate. She goes, oh my God. I go, what? It doesn't work, you know? And she's like, no, somebody must really like you. This is a gift certificate for $5,000. I'm like, what? So I called her. I said, are you out of your mind? He goes, well, I know that you didn't hit on 22, so I wanted to make it up to you. Now, who does that these days?
No, that sounds like him. Look, I remember having a fighter in camp with him, and fighter didn't have much, but Arturo really took a liking to him, as he did a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Went out, bought him sneakers, took him to go get a haircut. And it was like, that's just who he was. He was so down to earth, and never once did he ever shy away from taking a picture with someone who requested a picture. He was extremely down to earth, and I was glad I got to know him personally on a personal level. And so, no, he was definitely, and that's why I said not your favorite, but who you were the closest to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Arturo used to call me and leave and this is where I'm pissed that I never saved it, and leave messages on my cell phone. Now, we all know the accent Arturo had, right?
Right.
He was on my cell phone pretending he's a girl, saying he wants to be a ring card girl for the next fight. And then he would think like he tricked me, and I'm like, Arturo, I can tell it's you. Like, you're not, you have the accent and you don't sound like you can't even try to sound like a girl.
Right.
But like his fights, we always look forward to because they were fun. It
Now,
wasn't
I have to ask you this. Being in the promotional business, what was one of the worst venues that you've ever done a show at, and what was the best?
Venues? Well, I can't say venue like that they did bad. But
not bad as far as the crowd or the audience, but a place that was just a total shithole for you.
Oh, a total shithole.
And you better not say Reading.
That's easy. It wasn't that it was a shithole. We did a fight. I want to say it was a Telemundo fight. And it was in Secaucus at this ice rink.
I remember that place.
Remember it? It was like
Darling Jimenez used to fight there.
Yes. In the morning, and we had to set up the chairs and everything. In the morning we got there, it rained, and there was puddles all over by the ring. And we were sweeping them up. That was the biggest.
I might have been at that show, but Darling Jimenez used to be there. Who's the other Dominican fighter?
Sencion.
The one that fought at 160. Kurt Emhoff.
Giovanni Lorenzo?
Yes, Lorenzo. Those guys used to fight there because it was a huge Dominican area.
Dominican in Union City, yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I remember that place. And what was one of your favorites, or what is one of your favorite?
Mohegan Sun.
Mohegan Sun?
Yeah. Mohegan Sun, you don't even have to think. Like just as far as setup or whatever, it's all set up and it's done.
Yeah.
So that's, and it's good when everything's there.
Mohegan Sun's a nice one, yeah.
Yeah, I like Mohegan.
I enjoyed it because you were buying me drinks that night. So
one night.
That's when Curtis Stevens, the night before, when Curtis Stevens knocked out Elvin Ayala.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where the fights were.
Yeah,
it was great.
Yeah.
Any questions, Andrew? I'm taking everything. I'm sorry.
No, it's good conversation. I wanted to ask you, as far as your current roster goes, I know you guys still have Kovalev, but is there any of your prospects right now that you're particularly, I'm sure you're excited for all of them, but anybody you want to just give a mention about or tell people watching about?
Well, we have such a small roster that it's easy because, right now, all of our guys are kind of at that peak to make that jump. We have Backroom who's getting ready, God willing, when all this ends, he's number one in the IBF. We have Matt here. He was supposed to fight Charles Conwell on Showbox until this thing happened. So everybody's kind of right there. Cassius Chaney, he was going to fight in June on a Showbox. We're going to put him in a step-up fight. We have LaShawn Rodriguez, who's also a 54, 60-pounder that is ready to step up. All these guys are kind of Enrico Gogokia. Then we have a gun in a sense of Evan Holyfield, who I'm grooming. He's still in the grooming time right now.
What is he now? 4-0?
Yeah, 4-0.
Okay.
4-0. So, we have a lot of guys that are, up and coming that they just got to, it's that next fight. They're all at that next fight, basically.
Yeah. And,
Cassius Chaney, I think as a heavyweight, he's improved unbelievable from when he first started.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. It's interesting. So all weekend I was watching just old boxing fights, and almost all of them were TBKO productions, and they all involved main event fighters. I ended up watching 2 fights of Fernando Vargas and Gotti fights, and just it seemed like everybody, one side involved a main event fighter. Now, it's obviously a much smaller roster. Things have changed in the boxing landscape, as Marshall mentioned. And it seemed like for a while, the only notable main event fighter, or at least that was still on the big stage, was really Kovalev. So what do you guys, what's the plans with Kovalev right now? Is he another go?
He's scheduled to fight Sullivan Barrera. Everything's signed, sealed, and delivered. It's just waiting for when everything is lifted, basically. And,
Yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. So it seemed like Kovalev, in some ways, kind of fell apart a bit after the first Andre Ward fight. Not from a boxing standpoint, but it just seemed like his life started to kind of crumble. And I thought the Kovalev decision was kind of unfortunate. I think most people in boxing probably thought Kovalev won that.
first one.
I mean, I think I've heard Kathy Duva speak on this a few times. I mean, how much did that loss kind of change him going forward? And in your opinion?
I think I have a different opinion. I came up in the world of, from 97 until now. I think that fortunately, unfortunately, whatever you want to say, social media, you see everything. So, and it's like social media. You can look at somebody's Instagram and think they have the best life and they're getting fucking abused, right? They're showing all the good pictures and all this and that. Social media could really sell something a lot. And I'm not saying Kovalev is perfect. He went through a lot of mental stuff with the Ward fight that, he had to handle. Apollo, come here. But, it just was seen more because of social media. I think once he got with Buddy McGirt, things changed and he felt like he could breathe. That used to happen all the time in this business, but you don't watch it on social media. You know what I'm saying? Like it happened constantly, but I think a lot of, it's the same thing like with Adrian Broner, he's a train wreck. Oh my God, this and that. Most people know Adrian Broner through social media. Right?
Right, no, he has a huge following on social media.
Right. I don't know Adrian Broner from a can of paint, but I know Adrian Broner through social media or what I read in the news, right?
Just like with Tank Davis now.
Right. Now I make my own determination and think of Adrian Broner how I want to think of him. Because I don't know him though. It's the same thing. Zab Judah used to get a lot of heat coming up. He was one of the fucking easiest guys I dealt with. Fernando Vargas used to get a lot of heat coming up. He got in trouble and this and that. One of the easiest guys I dealt with. So it's just, I think that, I enjoy personally, and I know I'm getting all off key in here. I enjoy the problem child. I just do. There's something there with them. There's just something.
For the most part, because they're real.
Right. And I'm a person.
What you see is what you get.
Right. That's why I got along with a lot of them.
Right.
I would tell any of them if I didn't agree with them, you're fucking wrong at any time. unless it was fight week, I'd be a little nicer because they're making weight and, you know, whatever. You know, for the most part. But Andrew, go back to what you said. I agree with you. He did. And it's, you know, none of us are living his life. Here's a poor kid who comes from Russia, comes to America begging every promoter, please, please, no, 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 we're not interested. Main Event signs him. Then he's on NBC. Then he's going to HBO.
I think we lost some internet.
Yeah, probably she'll reconnect and get back in here in a moment. Sound like she was on a good thread.
Good roll there, yeah. The hopefully she gets back, because I'll tell you what, she has a lot. There's you go. Now you're back. You back, Jolene?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, can you finish on that? You were talking about a kid from Russia who came and he asked about the number of promoters assigned him, and then he fights on NBC.
Yeah,
I remember him at the Sands Casino, and I told you that kid's the real deal. And that's when you were just signing him then. I think he might have been 8-0 or something.
He wasn't signed. What happened was,
Right, he wasn't signed. You were working out the deal.
test.
Right.
Yes, it was a test. When we met with Agus, his manager, he said, look, watch him fight. If you don't like him, you don't have to do anything. I said, okay, let me get him an opponent. He wasn't on NBC. He was playing for the International.
And it wasn't an easy opponent.
That's why I did it.
Correct.
So I called Agus. I said, listen, what about Darnell Boone? He had trouble with him one time. He's with this new trainer and John David Jackson. Do you want to see if he got better? I do. Agus said, all right, let me talk to him, this and that. He called Sergey. Sergey loved the idea because it was going to make him more hungry. He was auditioning.
Of course.
And literally, he did what he did with Boone. And the next morning, we were in the Sands up in that little breakfast. Remember that room where you...
Yeah, of course.
Right, the Continental Breakfast, signing a promotional contract.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And no questions, no this, that, it was signed.
And then you brought him back there to the Sands Casino to fight the kid from Rochester.
No, we brought him back. He was supposed to fight not Campillo, Caparello.
But didn't he fight Lionel? What's the kid's name?
Because not Caparello, Campillo fell out. He pulled out.
Right. Correct. He was supposed to fight him, but didn't he fight that kid from Rochester, New York, and stopped him in like 3 rounds or something? I can't think of the kid's name.
Well, you know, maybe while you're thinking of it, we can answer a question here. So Brian Cohen asked a great question. You may know who Brian is, Jolene, but he manages a ton of female boxers, and he asked, you know, well, without saying it, he's probably thinking this company has so many, you know, women who are at the head of it. Why have you not signed any female boxers yet, or what's your thinking on that?
It's the same thing with how we had all females. It wasn't on purpose, not signing a female boxer. None has really, you know, it's not on purpose. It's just, we just haven't, you know, we talk to people and maybe it hasn't gone through. Yeah, but it just hasn't happened. I think that's a little cliche too, because we're all women. We got to sign women boxers.
Well, I added that part. He only asked
okay.
why female boxers.
No, I've talked to plenty of female boxers, and you know, it just never worked out. It wasn't the right fit. It wasn't the right fighter. Whatever you want to call it.
Fair enough.
Lionel Thompson's who I was thinking of. He fought Lionel Thompson at the Sands.
No, I've talked to plenty of female boxers, and you know.
think Jolene's frozen on us again.
Yeah, I'm back now.
Jolene, I was thinking about who Kovalev fought at the Sands, and it was Lionel Thompson.
Yeah, I know, but you're not listening to me. He was supposed to fight Campillo.
Correct.
Campillo pulled out 9 days before the fight. I then got Lionel Thompson at the last minute, and Sergey ended up going into the co-feature. And he was supposed to be the main event in that fight. We moved him into the co-feature, but he got the same money as he was going to get for a main event against Lionel Thompson. And he said that's something he will never forget.
Wow.
Saying like, oh, well, you're only fighting the co-feature, you know, we had to take
Right.
a deal.
Take less money.
Yeah, a deal's a deal. We had to take it on the chin, but it's not his fault it pulled out.
Correct. And
You
Lionel
know?
Thompson was no pushover.
No.
Look at who he just beat.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, he was no pushover, you know. And
No.
so, but I remember that, and I thought this kid's the real deal, you know.
Yeah.
And I knew that, you know. So did she answer the question about the female boxers?
She did, yeah.
I know she was breaking up there, you know. What else did you want to ask, Andrew?
I mean, I don't have anything.
You want to ask her what kind of coffee she likes?
Not really.
Jolene's always been in Dunkin' Donuts
Fuck that.
type of coffee and hazelnut.
Hazelnut Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know.
And you still remember, you're not losing it. That's good.
No, I haven't lost it yet. You know.
Yeah. That's the
Yeah,
key word.
exactly. So what's next? When do you plan on? I'm sure you just have meetings every week, and whatnot. Has there been talks about when you plan on trying to do another show? Without a crowd, with a crowd?
There's been talks, obviously, without a crowd. But it's a day by day. We're ready to pull a trigger, but there's nothing to pull until we see what the states are going to do.
Right.
And, you know, it's easy for everybody to say, let's do a fight with no crowd. That's great. But you have to have everything in order. We would need hundreds of tests. You know, we would need the tests to, you know, so there's a lot of logistics that go into it. It's not so easy to say, let's just do it without a crowd. And obviously, we got to get the TV network on deal, you know, on our side and involved.
Right. I talked to Gordon Hall, and the thing that they're interested, once we can get the states to approve, they're interested in doing a show because that's all they care about anyway, is the TV side of it.
Right.
And without a crowd, you know. But there's requirements that they want. Fighters have to be tested. Cornermen have to be tested. The referees have to be tested. The 2 ringside doctors have to be tested, because all of them cannot keep their distance from each other because they're all going to be close, you know. And so it's very difficult for us as a promoter to determine how we're going to do all that, you know, as well as financially afford to pay them.
It's a big cost.
Yeah.
And it's fine. It's a big cost, and it's for everybody's safety. So that's where we have commissions that are regulators. That's where they, you know, of course we would be involved, but that's where they should be regulating.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
It's different. Why do all these fighters get HIV, Hep B, and C? It's to protect the referee and everybody around them.
Right.
They get those tests, you know, and that's just the blood tests I'm talking about, because that's how
Right.
you know, but I mean, of course, the MRI and all that is for their safety, and the blood is really to protect everybody around that ringside.
Right.
So, you know, I think personally, down the line, it's going to now be HIV, Hep B, C, and COVID-19.
COVID-19, right?
Yep. It's going to have to be.
Yeah,
It's going to have to be.
at least for the next few months. Probably until the end
For
of
a
the year.
long time, the COVID-19, just like the HIV is for a long time. Has that gone away?
That has not gone away.
Right.
Have you
Well,
talked to Request a Test at all?
Now,
To see it? All right. That was going to be my call today, and I haven't gotten around to it.
to
But
see if
I'm
they have the
going
test
to see if they have the test. And if so,
website.
how long would it take to get back?
Yeah.
You know?
That's the thing. Everybody would need rapids,
Right.
I think it's actually going to be logistically a pretty challenging thing to do. And I hope if the states mandate that, if we get back to it, that they kick in and help with some of the costs that are going to be involved. Because if you're asking us to do shows on crowd with a very limited revenue, but adding 30 to 50 additional tests that I can't imagine are going to be all that cheap, $50 to $100 a pop at least. I mean, there needs to be some sort of support or cushion as far as that goes.
Oh no, I agree, and I think that fortunately, it's going to be other sports that boxing is going to end up following. They're not going to be the first.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just there's going to have to be. The problem is it's a touchy situation. It's okay. We're going to do a boxing match, right? We need 100 rapid kits, right? Let's just say. Meanwhile, the people on the corner and all these, they can't get a test. That's fucked up.
Right?
Think about it. That's where my concern is. Okay, we're going to do a boxing match, give us 100 tests. Great. We got them. Bring somebody in to test them. Meanwhile, Joe Schmo on the corner is coughing and has a fever and can't get a fucking test.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's where I think like the MLB and the NBA, and that's where they're going to have to, because I'm not going to lie. And I know others thought, especially you, Marshall, here we go. This COVID-19 thing starts. What do you hear about this basketball player having it, that basketball? And you're thinking to yourself, how the fuck did they get a test so quick, right?
Right. Oh, yeah, exactly.
Tom Hanks is in Australia. He has it. Like, what, like.
How'd they get tested so quick?
Yeah. And so now imagine putting on a show, and there's a lot of angry Americans right now, whether you're Republican, Democrat, whatever you are, right? And saying, okay, everybody's been tested. Oh, main events, they did over 200 tests on everybody. And then you got the guy who's at home, God forbid, dying, who can't even get a test.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. Imagine how many more people would be pissed at us.
Yes, it wouldn't help our cause.
You're right.
Would not help our cause.
So what are you doing with your boxers now that, of course they can't fight. So, I mean, is it almost, I'm sure you have in your contracts, which I'm sure you do. You guys have one of the best boxing attorneys in the world in Pat English.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sure it's in the contract that during this pandemic, not quite the word pandemic, but that their contract, because there's no fights, that their contract gets extended,
Right.
Until there are fights again, So that's one of the things that I have as well, and I've been working on with some of the boxers, because first thing the boxers are going to say is, "Hey, I want to fight. I didn't fight for those 3 months. That means our contract's shorter now by 3 months." No, it's not. Nobody fought.
No, it's nobody's fault, and unfortunately, everybody's going to have to get in line once it opens up.
Right. And, we talked to Russell last week about some of the boxers are going to say, "Hey, I've been off for a while. I want an easy test. I want a tune up." Well, every boxer's been off for a while. There are no tune ups, So I think that's my view on it. I think there are no tune-ups and you have to fight, you know, and
Yes.
you go as planned. I mean, like guys like you talked about, Evan Holyfield and that, they're still in the learning stages, you know.
Yes.
They're still
yes.
learning, they're still growing. But guys who you're trying to put in position to fight on Showbox and bigger TV opportunities, whether it be ESPN or PBC or Matchroom or DAZN, I should say.
Mhm.
Those guys, there are no easier fights. It's time to fight, you know. And
No, and they have to be ready. When the time comes, they have to be just ready to get on.
exactly. Now,
You know,
how many fighters do you have in your stable right now?
13.
And Kovalev, you would say is number one of those 13 as
Yeah.
far as the status, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know Cheney's not far behind. He's really,
No.
I mean, he's really been looking good.
He's developed very well. I mean,
Right.
I'm the person who, matched his first fight.
Right. I
And-
know he was scheduled to fight in June and on the Showbox card up
Mhm.
at Turning Stone.
Yes.
And, right. And unfortunately, I mean, that whole thing fell through. So I'm sure Lou's trying to get something. And I know you guys have probably been in contact with Gordon as well.
Yeah.
But, nobody knows anything right now.
No, and that's the thing. It's a hard situation, like right now for everybody.
Mhm.
It's a hard situation to be like, everybody's asking the same question. When's boxing going to be back? When's boxing in back? I don't give a shit who you are. I don't care if you're Eddie Hearn. I don't care if you're nobody knows.
Nope, you just don't.
And so it's hard to address it.
Yeah, no, you're right. I talked to Serb today, and just because I've been trying to work on things as well, and Serb told me as of May 8th, once he hears from the governor's office, they would know they're only going to allow sports to take place in certain demographics where the COVID-19 is not as dominant as it may be. Like Philadelphia is going to be a long time,
Right.
because Philadelphia's been hit so hard. Same thing with New Jersey. New Jersey's been hit hard.
Mhm.
Now, not every city in New Jersey has been hit hard, but the state of New Jersey has been hit hard. So, it's just, you just don't know, and you hope that the city that you want to do a show in is not the red zone. They're calling it a red, yellow, and green zone, but hopefully it's in the yellow or the yellow zone. So
The
we
problem
just don't
is,
know.
the problem is too, there's so many different aspects, because let's say hypothetically you go to the green zone, right?
Right.
Bring everybody in 3 days before the fight. This one's coming from California. This one's coming from whatever. Now, say somebody has it, and now they're in the green zone and they're passing it. Now the green zone don't have the hospitalization that the red zone has.
Right.
So it's kind of like, that sounds good, but there's so much like obstacles,
No, we're going to be facing obstacles for quite some time.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And Andrew's a doctor. Didn't know if you knew that or not, but so he should know a little bit about what kind of obstacles we're going to face.
You're a doctor?
Yes.
Tell us about when are we going back? When are we going back?
Yeah, no, I mean, nobody knows. I mean, we're at Penn State, we're working on, we've actually announced plans to reopen up the hospital for elective procedures and things that have been, but I mean, nobody really knows yet. There's still too many unanswered questions, but I don't think when we open up, I mean, we're never going to get to a perfect solution. And I mean, we're going to have to accept that any solution is going to involve some trade-offs. And, I do think that we should consider reopening soon, particularly in places that haven't been hit particularly hard. We do have some of those areas in Pennsylvania, so hopefully we can consider getting back there soon. And whether you test fighters and their teams once they arrive, before they leave where they're coming from. I mean, I think those things, I think can be worked out to some extent. The main thing I'm worried about is the cost of the test. I mean, I know from the medical standpoint, we're ramping up test capacity very quickly in this country. I think that within 2 to 4 weeks, availability of testing isn't going to be an issue anymore, but the cost of the test is still going to be an issue. And I worry about how that's going to be shared, or if it's just going to be expected to fall entirely on the promoters who are taking, more risk than even normal, given, the restraints that are going to be placed on everything.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, like you said, because I think that in a sense, everybody should chip in, if the commission should want this, the TV should want this, probably most, the promoters need it for revenue. So it's like the fighters need fights. I think everybody should chip in one way or another, because it's literally, it benefits everybody.
Correct.
Because now it's not the promoter getting the live gate. There is none, so.
Absolutely right. Well, look, Jolene, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you came on, and I knew that it would be entertaining, as always.
Wait, somebody has to say hi.
Hey, Apollo, right?
Apollo Gaddy.
Apollo.
He was very jealous that I was on.
I see his ears just went up.
See him? Where is he?
Hey. But look, it's been a pleasure, Jolene. I appreciate it. And, it's always great. I always have fun when I'm with you. I love talking to you, as always.
Likewise.
Should have had some of that vodka, though.
Oh, I had it for you. Don't worry.
There you go. But look, thanks again. And let me know, keep me up to date on when you start that podcast, the Joe and Joe. And I love to tune in.
Cut out again, I think.
I said, let me know when you start that podcast for the Joe and Joe, because I would love to tune in. Did you hear that?
No, what'd you say?
I said, let me know when you start that podcast, so I could tune in.
Oh yeah, no, I will.
Definitely.
I will.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jolene. We'll
All
talk
right,
to you
bye.
soon.
All right,
talk
take
to you
care.
soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.